Hey guys, welcome to Into the Storm, Freedom to Live Counseling podcast, YouTube video. I got Adam, Freddie, and my son Robbie here. We're going to actually have some fun today. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this. We're going to talk about the three stomachs. I don't know if you guys know, but you do have three stomachs. I don't know. Do you guys know that you have three stomachs?
No, I have one.
I thought only.
No, so
Not part bovine.
It's cows, bovine are quattro.
Man.
So ostriches have three. If you watch the last, is it Dr. Dolittle, or it's one of the more recent movies, like, anyways, ostriches have three. I'm just making that point, okay? So, but we do have three, and I'm going to prove it to you. Anybody in the medical field? Anybody here in the medical field? Okay, so you're not going to try to fight me with science. Okay, so how do you guys know that you have a stomach? Have you guys ever seen your physical stomach?
No, I haven't seen the physical.
Some people like to say they've seen the evidence of a physical stomach, some bigger than others. I mean, you know, but have you ever seen the organ, physical stomach?
I have not.
Yeah, no? Okay, so how do you know you have one?
So you're hungry. You need fuel. You need energy.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
when it's growling.
Huh?
When it's growling for food, when you're hungry.
Okay. Robbie, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was gonna go a little more coarse. I'll start with you guys. Although there's evidence that I have a stomach regularly.
Right. So something goes in and something comes out, right? And
Exactly.
then in the middle of the process, there's satisfaction, right? Right.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So okay, for you at home watching this, please, these aren't trained experts here, so we're having a little difficulty with these guys kind of getting this. But anyways, so the three stomachs, the first one is evidence by hunger. Is that fair? Would you say a hunger pang would be evidence of having a physical stomach?
Yep.
Yes? Okay.
Yep.
So what happens to you, Adam, when you get physically hungry? What do you feel? What is a physical hunger?
I get irritable. I get angry. Some would call it hangry. I get short-tempered, I think, at some points.
Do you turn into a diva? Like
The Snickers commercial. Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of energy in the blood rushes. It kind of consumes you.
Okay. All right. Robbie, what about you? What happens to you
I'd
when
say
you're
the same.
the same?
It's almost quite obvious when I'm really hungry. Put an In-N-Out burger in front of me, and I'm fine after that.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to have In-N-Out burgers
here.
Yeah. What about you, Freddie? What happens to you when you get physically hungry? What do you feel?
Yeah, just irritated, and then I get frustrated, and then impatient. Like I want to hurry up and finish my work just so I could get to eat.
Okay. All
And
right.
then once I eat, then I become all calm and more friendly.
Okay, that's good to know. I don't ever want to meet you when you're hungry. Hey, Freddie, take off your hat. Let's just show the rest of the fellas. You're all sporting the same haircut. Look at you. All you fine fellas there with your hair short. All right, what happened to me? Oh, this is COVID-19 hair. Okay, it's not been cut yet. Okay, so anyways, back to the three stomachs. So any of you guys ever feel physically empty, like there's an emptiness?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering that. Man, this is going to be a rough half hour. Sorry, people out there. But anyway, so physical hunger pain is evidence of having a physical stomach. So what happens to you when you go to the grocery store and you're hungry?
Worst idea. You always end up buying way too much or a bunch of garbage because it's quick.
Yeah. Is that what you experience, Adam? Freddie?
Impulse buyer for sure.
Yeah, just buying snacks, just buying stuff that sometimes I don't even need, but I just want to buy it because I'm hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. One time I was so hungry, I ate a, what are those little marshmallow things called with all the sugar on it? A peep.
Peep.
I ate a peep. I couldn't believe it. And I never thought I'd ever eat a peep. But let me tell you, when you're hungry, even marshmallows taste good. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Being, retired in law enforcement, I love donuts. Don't put me in front of donuts if I'm hungry. Mostly an apple fritter. I'm all over that, right?
Donuts and coffee, huh?
Yeah, once a cop, always a cop, right? So, so you guys are actually pretty normal. That may not be what everybody else sees, but you guys are pretty normal. That's usually what I hear is everybody says they buy everything and they go outside their budget, right? So that's kind of what you guys are all saying. All right.
Yep.
Thank you very much. All right. So being a counselor out here in Colorado Springs, I get to talk to a lot of military folks. And one time I was talking to this guy who's special forces, and we were talking about this, and he told me, I asked him, I said, how long, what was the longest that you've been without food? And so he was telling me about this escape and evasion training that he does. And he said that the longest he didn't eat was about 6 days. And so they had dropped him in this area out in the Rockies, and he had a compass and a knife, and he had to find his way to a certain location, and he had to eat right off of the land, basically. So we were talking about this. I'll get back to him in a sec, but what's the longest that you guys have been without food?
Just one day. So yeah, one day just because I was busy working all day from starting my shift and then all the way till night. So then I didn't eat till the next day, the next morning.
Okay.
I've done
24 hours for me, for sure.
I think I've done a 3-day fast, but that's not like that was a choice.
Yeah. Were you hungry?
Yes. Water only goes so far.
Okay. So this guy, this military guy was telling me, he said he was so hungry after a couple of days that he was literally like hallucinating. He was picturing the birds that were flying over like a cartoon. They were roasted in the air, and he said when he'd fall asleep, he was dreaming about hot dogs and hamburgers. He actually said when he finally got back to his base, they went out and had hamburgers. He had like 3 meals, 3 hamburgers, all fries. He said he was so stinking hungry. So I asked him a question. I said, if you were as hungry as you were, like 2 to 3 days without, this is a question for you guys. Okay, who's getting the call? Is it from one of your moms or something? Okay. You guys
I was getting a text message.
Híjole, you're supposed to turn off your notifications, S.A.
Am I? How do I do that?
Adam, give him the tutorial.
Turn off your notifications for your cell phone. Are you on your cell phone?
Yeah.
So just go to your settings and then down to your text message app, the icon. And I think you can do it from there. It's actually quite funny. The noise.
It's kind of like if we were going to swear or something, it'd be a censor.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe you should keep that on, Freddie.
What?
Is that an iPhone or a Droid? Oh, we lost Freddie.
Oh, he's gone.
Okay.
No, we lost one.
All right. Well, we'll just cut this out.
I can pause it.
Yeah, let's pause it. All right, guys. Hey, we're back from that little brief intermission. Thanks, Freddie. Freddie didn't know how to.
Gotta turn off notifications.
So maybe we're just going to leave that on there, brother. But anyways, keep you humble. So back to the 3 stomachs. So I was asking that guy, I said, if he was hungry for a couple of days and he had no promise of food in the future, and he was put on like some desert island or something, and with no promise of food, and somebody put a garbage can full of half-eaten Subway sandwiches in front of him, could he eat from them? And so I'm asking you guys the same question. If you didn't eat for several days and you were put in the same situation, like on a desert island, and you had no promise of food in the future, and somebody put a garbage can full of half-eaten Subway sandwiches in front of you, could you guys eat from that, do you think?
Yeah. Little by little though, because I think if you start eating it too fast, I think you're just gonna damage yourself.
Yeah, but would you be hungry enough, do you think, to get past the fact that somebody might have already gnawed on those a little bit?
That's
That would
still
be,
part of survival.
Yeah. Do you agree, Robbie?
yeah, I would be willing and able to eat that whole entire trash can.
Yeah. Adam, you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we know, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What's the basic human need? We risk everything for food, shelter, and water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're willing to push the envelope. So my buddy, the soldier, said the same thing. He definitely would be able to eat that. So that's your physical stomach, and physical hunger pangs is evidence of having a physical stomach. That all makes sense, guys? Good? We're good with that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever been emotionally hungry?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what does an emotional hunger pang feel like?
Loneliness.
Yeah.
I struggled with loneliness.
Okay.
Still do.
What else?
Reading the 5 love languages talks about your love tank being empty, just as a reference, and it was an interesting concept to understand. And it was obviously speaking about whatever love language that you speak or receive, and that being empty and knowing how to communicate that. But that was, I think that would definitely be an emotional emptiness, is when you're not receiving the love the way that you need to.
Okay. Yeah. How about you, Freddie?
That feeling sad, sad and empty.
Okay. So guess what, guys? You guys again passed the normalcy standard. You guys are normal. It's good to know. And so this is what a lot of people say when I ask them that question. They'll say stuff along the lines like, how about their need for connection, their need for another human's attention, communication. So those are all forms of hunger, or emotional hunger, right? You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
So guess what? Guess what, Freddie?
What?
You got an emotional stomach, but you didn't know that, did you? Bam, right there. See? Because if you got an emotional hunger pain, then you got an emotional stomach. So guess what happens? If you have an emotional stomach and you didn't know about it, how do you know how to feed it? How do you even know that you have emotional hunger? So then we have this world, the universe, this place where we go and find our food. And what happens if you go out into that world or onto the internet or to a party and you're emotionally hungry? What happens? Everything looks good and you go outside your morals. Does that make sense? Very similar to what happens when you're physically hungry. Everything looks good and you'll buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then worst case scenario, you starve yourself long enough and somehow somebody, the universe, brings along, a garbage can full of half-eaten crap, emotional crap, and you're going to eat it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Makes sense? Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Okay. Yeah. So that's your emotional stomach, emotional hunger. So we've got a third one. So you got the physical, you got the emotional. Does anybody want to take a stab at what the third one is?
Probably like something to do with aggression, maybe, or like tolerance.
No, not that. Yeah, Freddie.
Spiritual.
Yeah, spiritual. Yeah. So do we have spiritual hunger?
Yes, we
I think
do.
we're born with it.
Yeah. What does that feel like?
I
A
think
lot of people just.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was just saying it's just it's a hunger, an emptiness that can only be filled by God and faith and
Mm-hmm.
by experience. And that's a longing, like Robbie mentioned. It's you're born with, and it's kind of your responsibility, your duty to go and find it and find that faith and belief in a higher power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Robbie?
I was going to say very similar along the lines of what Adam just said, just that we have a God-shaped hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Freddie?
Oh yeah, the spiritual. Yeah, so you're born with it. You raised with it, and you just have to keep staying focused with it and keep wanting it.
So what happens, what are some of the things that we need spiritually? How about like purpose, unconditional love, peace, joy? I always tell people as a counselor, don't go and look for that in the other person, right? Any of you guys ever look for that in your loved one and said, I really long for you to meet this mommy need or this daddy need in me, but it's like we have to do the work to find out how to feed that part of us spiritually. All right, who's doing dishes?
Janelle is putting all the dishes away at this current moment in time.
Okay. Welcome to Freedom to Live podcast.
Recording.
Hi, Janelle. So anyways, back to the spiritual hunger, right? So spiritual hunger pangs could be maybe you're longing for forgiveness, you're longing for some kind of connection beyond human connection. And then worst case scenario is that we end up allowing ourselves to go to a place where you can actually have other spiritual things available to you, and everything looks good, and you go outside your morals and your ethics. I listened to that podcast, Robbie, on Jim Jones. Man,
Dude.
those people were spiritually hungry, right?
Yeah, that's the third documentary, or that's the podcast, but it's the third different variation on Jim Jones that I've listened to or watched. And yeah, they were longing for something, and Jim Jones was able to I'm trying to think of the word, but they didn't know who God was, the true God
Right.
was to begin with, to
Right.
be able to be deceived so easily by someone who claimed he was God.
Yeah. I mean, how many toxic relationships do we get into as humans if we don't understand our own hunger, our own responsibilities, and how many toxic relationships could we get into, not knowing what truth is? And so spiritual hunger can drive us, right? How many of you guys would say even your addictions were something that you used to fill a spiritual need?
Yeah, man. Yeah, like my addiction was there, like using it to heal, spiritually. Just using it to forget, using it to just just to ease pain. Just like if I was praying, my addiction was doing the same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I had an intimate relationship with my drug of choice, which was alcohol.
Yeah.
So I turned to alcohol to solve every problem that I was faced, and instead of looking at the issues and sitting with those emotions, I chose to escape those emotions, escape reality by numbing myself and filling that void with a substance.
Right. Right. Yeah. Robbie?
I completely agree. Yeah, I didn't want to feel anything to begin with, so very similar along the lines of drug addiction. I was a heroin addict, so it's like, it was easy to escape reality and not face the truth and just fake like everything was okay. But obviously, I didn't want to feel anything, and didn't want to really deal with it mentally, physically, emotionally at all. So it was just easier to shove it deep down and do a bunch of drugs and make myself feel like I was happy because I was producing chemicals in my brain telling me that I was happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the spiritual stomach. It's kind of interesting, that even though we're talking about, spiritual hunger, it fascinates me to talk to a bunch of people where we end up, talking about their addictions, and they'll end up saying, yeah, literally, I would starve myself physically. So when I either drank or used, or even some of the sex addicts I talk to, they'll say they would starve themselves for a period of time so they could literally experience a greater high. I don't know if you guys ever did that.
I wouldn't say I did it cognitively, but when I was in rehab, I went through a Christian rehab, just for everyone else that I know. One of the leaders kind of brought something to light that I never thought about before, that, alcohol, another word for it was spirits, but also with drugs, right, very similar. There could be spirits. I put that in parentheses or quotations because some people don't want to believe that there's things attached to it when there really is, because it's always a spiritual battle. But there are different spirits attached with each addiction, and it's always a ritual. Each person has a ritual to usually how they go about doing their drug of choice. Mine was very structured. I had a nice little pen box that I would keep all my things in there. I'd hide it away safely. And there was a ritual to it where I would almost fast, like I do now for God, but I would fast beforehand. And then use, which was a ritual practice. It's like I'm almost praying to my drug of choice. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I was not, exactly the same way, but I wouldn't say I would intentionally withhold myself from my drug of choice, but there were some instances where I wasn't available, or I wasn't able to do it, or I was trying to hide or make sure everybody thought I was doing okay. So I needed to calm down, or, keep my head together. And so there were those points in my life where I would withhold myself from that substance, sometimes by choice, sometimes not. But it would always build this, I don't know, this deep hunger for it. And once I received it, it was, like you said, a deeper high, a deeper drunk in this case, right, it would be almost euphoric.
Yeah. Freddie?
Yeah, man, it's just like the hunger for it. I was craving it. So I would always, use it. I'd even go days without even feeding the other stomach. I was not even feeding that. So I would go days without even eating, and I was just feeding my addiction into my stomach instead of food. So I'd go weeks like that, and it was devastating. It was throwing up blood. It was just all that for not eating and just feeding the addiction instead of food.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy, so if we go back to like finishing the metaphor with the spiritual stomach, that, you starve yourself long enough, you'll eat anything spiritually, back to like the Jim Jones or the David Koresh's, right? Or Hell Bop, Heaven's Gate, people do crazy stuff when they're spiritually hungry, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I know a lot of people who in their life have used addictions as a way to try to meet a spiritual need or an emotional need. So with that being said, from now on, gentlemen, you have 3 stomachs, right? So the moral of the story is this. Well, actually, I have a couple of things to say about it before I wrap up, actually. So, you know, if you think about like even some of the places where people have starved, North Korea, where they boil bark to fill their hunger, right? We have Haiti, where they've in 2010, they had that earthquake. They would mix dirt with some of their food to just kind of give them more sustenance. Then, you know, we have the Donner Party, you know, that started doing cannibalism. We have the folks that crashed the airplane on the Andes who, you know, ate their teammates. You know, well, we just need to understand that hunger, not only physical hunger, but emotional hunger and spiritual hunger will drive us to a place where, as humans, we'll do everything back to, like you said, Freddie, survival, right? But sometimes survival is not really thriving. We're just surviving, right? So not everything we eat and fills us is something that's good. So what we have to remember now moving forward, mostly with addiction, is what was I trying to feed with my addiction? What stomach was I really trying to feed? And one of the things I like to use with this is the fact that we all have hunger. We all struggle with, you know, the daily physical hunger. But how do you feed yourself emotionally and spiritually now that you know you got 3 stomachs rather than just one? And, you know, it's interesting, as a country, we've done pretty good in understanding nutrition. Robbie, you like studied nutrition pretty well, but how many people spend the time to figure out how to eat emotionally well? How many people learn how to eat spiritually well? You know, I find that a lot of people have to come to a crisis, unfortunately, before they recognize, hey, I haven't been fed well. One, I probably wasn't taught how to eat well emotionally or spiritually, you know, maybe even physically. But now I need to be responsible for that. And who's responsible for how you eat?
Oh, myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Myself.
you're
It's
the adult on scene, so you better figure it out, right?
No, it's like you just said, you know, you have to wait until there's a crisis. For my example, you know, I lost my brother to suicide, and I had to wait for his death to kind of change me now, to find myself spiritually stronger, emotionally stronger. But like I said, I had to wait for that crisis.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
No, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. Sorry about that loss, but you know, a lot of times we really don't appreciate
Yep.
things about who we are until we go through a crisis, you know. And I can honestly say, for me in my own journey, my own recovery, I didn't know how lonely I was. I had, you know, a lot of things that made it look like I had my life together. You know, Robbie will remember a lot of this, and I had a career that was pretty, you know, being in law enforcement, it's kind of one of those careers that everybody knows about, but at the core of who I was hiding a lot of stuff, a lot of shame, and I used that to mask. And when I got into recovery myself, I began to realize, man, I was lonely because a lot of people didn't know what I was struggling with. And on top of that, you know, I felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. And until, you know, I really committed my relationship, truly, you know, my heart to God, I didn't realize how hungry I really was, spiritually and emotionally. So this is how we're going to wrap this up today, guys. Is I'm going to give you the moral of the story, and then we're going to do a part 2 where we talk about how do we feed those stomachs. Okay. So, if like Aesop's fables, remember he always had like a moral to the story. So the moral to the story is, the next time you put food in your mouth, I want you to ask the question, how have I fed myself emotionally and spiritually today? All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And I'll
Copy
talk
that.
to you guys next week on part 2, 3 stomachs.